Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I want to bring you another Goosebumps talk type of video. In today's video, I've been wanting to do this video for quite some time for you all. Ever since my last Q&A, people were asking me, what are your favorite Goosebumps villains? And I'm like, you know what? That'll be a good video to discuss with you all. And since, in terms of stories, like the amount of them, we're talking full books, GYG, short stories, I think I'm about halfway, maybe a little over halfway through all of them. I thought, why not do a top 5 favorite Goosebumps villains now? And then once I'm done reading everything, I might come back and do a top 10 and see where I'm at there. So, yeah, let's get into it. My top 5 favorite Goosebumps villains, at least at the moment, okay? Now, for me, I want to stress this to you. In Goosebumps, there's a whole wide variety of villains. You got monsters, you got, human villains sometimes, you have more thematic villains like fame or greed that can be the case. They're all over the place, right? For me, I think these 5 that I picked encapsulate my inner child the most. Me being almost 30 years old, when I read these books, I'm looking for a connection to my childhood, and I think these 5 villains connect me to that time of my life when I first became a fan of horror and, especially a fan of Goosebumps the most. So, keep that in mind. I pulled villains from all walks of Goosebumps. I pulled them from classic books. I pulled them from GYG. I pulled them from the short stories from Tales. So, we got a lot of variety here, okay? So, my number 5 favorite Goosebumps villain goes to a villain from a short story from the 5th Tales to Give You Goosebumps book, and it is Chop Suey from What's Cooking. Chop Suey is the closest thing in Goosebumps I can think of that resembles a slasher. And there's some type of villains that you just don't see often in the series, and Chop Suey is one of them. The best way I can describe her as a villain, she's kind of like if you took, Candyman from the Candyman movies and made it kid-friendlier and blended it with some aspects of Bloody Mary and maybe some of, I'm trying to think. She has a lot of, if you've ever seen the movie Ice Cream Man from the 90s, she has a lot of that in the vein of her character too. And there's something about this villain that just speaks to me. She's so frightening, the way she's described in the story and what she does to kids. There's things in here that I'm shocked made it into a Goosebumps story, where there's descriptions of her, at least in the urban legends of her, she chops up kids and their body parts and puts them into lunch meals. And when these kids hear the legend, they chant her name 3 times and she comes to life and plays mind games with them and eventually starts coming after them with cleavers, trying to cut them up. It's one of those special case villains in Goosebumps. I wish so much that this was turned into a full book and maybe Scholastic rolled the dice with this type of story. But yeah, my number 5 goes to Chop Suey. She's a very well-loved villain from me. So, yeah. There's that. Now, at number 4, this one is a bit different from Chop Suey. But this villain also has probably the best threat level I've seen in Goosebumps, where this villain, there's really no answer to stop them. And they have a lot of power. They can transfer themselves to different items. They can cause physical harm, mental degradation, could be kind of quick-tempered, and when they get angry, you know, in the story it gets really tense. And that villain goes to Emmy from Don't Scream. Emmy is one of these AI-centered villains that you'll find in kids' horror every once in a while. Normally, every the Goosebumps has this, and then all the knockoff Goosebumps series will have a story with an Emmy clone in there somewhere. But ironically, this this villain came out years later than most of them. But I will say, Emmy is such an overlooked villain in the series. She is incredible. Everything that she did in this book was so cold, almost calculated in some ways, where she wants what she wants, and if the character doesn't give her what she wants, she's willing to cause physical harm onto him. And the character just can't get rid of her. I mean, he tries at various points of the story, but she can just animate herself on pretty much any form of technology. And I think what she's able to bring out of the character is a bit deeper than what you see in normal Goosebumps stories. I think Emmy is kind of like an inflection on technology addiction in general. Like, wherever the main character tries to destroy one piece of technology he likes to use, he falls back on another, and she's there again. So there's some metaphorical things going on with her character that I just think works so well, and there's so much untapped potential with their character that you can make like a prequel book out of or a sequel book out of, and I think it will work every time, and you can change up the formula. She's fantastic. Probably one of the more menacing Goosebumps villains to ever come out. Seriously. So yeah, that's why she's my number 4. My number 3 goes to a villain that's exclusive to the Goosebumps TV show. And I don't know what it is about this villain, but this villain just speaks to me on so many levels. They're so charming. They're so conniving, mind-gamey. You know, that seems to be the trend. I like mind-gamey villains, or villains that really have no solid way to get rid of them. They have supernatural elements to them, or elements to where they're kind of larger than life in some ways. And I don't know, maybe it's the actor who performs this character that just elevates it to a new level, but it goes to Carl Knov. I think that's how you say the last name. But just Carl from the Trilogy set of episodes. Carl is Goosebumps' version of Beetlejuice, but done in such a fun and unique way. He has this little model town that he lives in, and he traps kids in there and messes with them, toys with them to see what he can, make them do. And then once you realize his motives and how he's down to like turn people into his plastic figurines to live in his town with him as kind of like his slaves or puppets, it's so fun. And I think Daniel Cash, who plays Carl in these episodes, just really sends that home. I mean, Carl, he has some funny quips to him. He's more on the comedic side, but he's also very conniving, kind of twisted, but in more of a hammy way. I think he's probably the best hammy Goosebumps villain that ever existed, even though R.L. Stine never created him. I think it's a shame that, back in the day, these set of episodes weren't released on VHS, or Stine didn't entertain trying to work with Dan Angel or Billy Brown to get like a book made for this character, because he's genuinely great. One of the most memorable villains in the whole series, if you ask me. Carl's just so solid. I mean, if you love these episodes, you probably love them for a lot of the reason because of Carl, and I quite love these episodes. I think Carl's great. I think he's one of the more intriguing ideas for a villain that I've ever seen associated with the IP. So that's my number 3. Now, my number 2 kind of goes into a franchise of sorts, and I know I'm kind of cheating here, but not really. I recently acquired these for my collection, and I thought this would be a fun way to show them off instead of showing just a book or a DVD or something. And my number 2 goes to pretty much the villains that started my love of Goosebumps at the heart of it, at the heart of my Goosebumps obsession, essentially. And it's the Haunted Mask. Now, I'm cheating here because I love pretty much all the masks associated with here, with the franchise here. I just want to showcase the mask here. This is a Trick or Treat Studios mask replica from the classic episode from 1995. This is the mask that Catherine Long would have worn on set, or at least it looks very close to it. My only complaint is the teeth don't bulge out like the real thing. But, you know, for a reasonably priced, you know, mask that you just display, this is great. I'm not going to take the tag off or anything. But, yeah, the Haunted Mask, this concept is so intriguing to me, and it's always scared me. It birthed my favorite, I guess, trope in Goosebumps, where characters wear something that changed them, and they have to find a way to, I don't know, remedy the situation and find a way to destroy these masks or suits. This story went on to inspire other things like werewolf skin. Well, not really inspire werewolf skin, but there's a lot of similarities there that really cross for me, and I think that's why I love werewolf skin so much, and the original Haunted Mask and the episode, you know. But for the original Haunted Mask, I love the concept where, you know, the wearer becomes evil, and the mask, the more you put it on, the harder it is to take off, and it starts to contaminate you and take you over. That's such a fun idea, and the fact that it gets power on Halloween, and it's like filled with evil, and there's some bizarre things that can become of it. You know, there are some loose things, you know, how they can fly, how they're supposedly haunted, and they got possessed by the power of Halloween, even though in the original idea of the story, you know, the guy, the shopkeeper, he was playing with chemicals and it got on his face, and now he just makes masks. It's very loose, but if you look past that, this is another one of those villains that are used to kind of bring out a deeper message within the character of the story, with like self-identity, self-love, and these masks are called the Unloved Ones. You know, this is one of the Unloved One masks. And how the main character can find, you know, some confidence by wearing this, but over time they start to realize that they miss just being themselves and want to improve on themselves. And I just think this is such a great concept for a villain, and easily one of the most iconic looking things. But I also have another one, and I'll bring it up here, and that is the Haunted Mask 2 mask. Now, this one kind of works differently. This was Steve's mask from the episode, and look how scary this thing is. The hair, my only complaint is the hair. It's very easy to peel off on these Trick or Treat Studios masks, and it's kind of, you know, staticky all the time. I'm constantly trying to like brush it down so it doesn't get tangled and stuff, but the mask looks incredible. And this mask has a different type of effect on the wearer. It makes them old, and, you know, there's some things you can bring out of the character about missing their youth and tying together those themes like Steve had in the original Haunted Mask 2 story. More so the episode where he's worrying about his final Halloween. He can go trick-or-treating and wants to make sure he can, you know, do it up one last time before he gets too old. And that kind of, you know, translates very well thematically with this mask here. And yeah, I just love how in the Haunted Mask series, you know, that these masks bring out something deeper from the characters, and you know, bring out themes that tie together really nicely. There are some loose things, you know, canon wise and continuity wise, that don't really add up book to book, but I still love them regardless. So yeah, the Haunted Masks as a collective go as my number 2 slot. But my number 1 favorite Goosebumps villain of all time. Not a lot of people probably have heard of this villain, but in my opinion, this is as perfect as you can get of a Goosebumps villain. It's from a Give Yourself Goosebumps book. I raved about it a while ago on the channel when I read it, and I just immediately fell in love with this villain. I think this character just has the most personality, the most corruptness, the most humor, some really creative things that you can do with this character. And I would love to see more of this character, whether I have to play Goosebumps Horror Town or anything. I am so down. And it is Dr. McDeath from Scary Birthday to You. A lot of people might be scratching your heads. Why is a Give Yourself Goosebumps villain my number 1? Well, Dr. McDeath is one of the most creative and out there villains I've ever encountered in Goosebumps. He is so conniving and methodical. For example, how he handles the kids in the story, no matter what path you go on, he sets up these elaborate games, like go find a decapitated head, or you're forced to listen to some CDs I made you for your birthday, but if you play the CDs, you might hear the screams of your friends that may or may not have been killed because of me, or you're going to have to endure some type of crazy excursion on your birthday that I plan to pretty much ruin your life. He's so fun, and he has a lot of funny one-liners here, and the paths you can take with him. It's so much fun. I think he does something with monster blood in this. He's willing to like tie in, you know, other Goosebumps monsters into his plans. It's so fun. I mean, he's just the epitome of a fun Goosebumps villain all around. I mean, I seriously wish that in like the series like Horrorland, right, when you had this, you know, overarching story, if Stein really wanted to, and if I had a time machine, I would go back in time and sit down with R.L. Stein and be like, hey, look, if you're going to do this overarching story with these first 10 books, why not pick villains that you feel like you can prop up to another level that you've already, you know, come out with? And I would totally try to push for Dr. McDeath being in that, because I think it would be so much fun to see this character in Horrorland. I mean, holy crap, I think it would be awesome. But yeah, if you have not read this book, you need to try this, and I think most people will fall in love with it because of the villain here, Dr. McDeath. He's just fantastic. I mean, I think genuinely the perfect Goosebumps villain. I mean, he's just well-rounded. Probably one of the more creative things to come out of this franchise, if you ask me. So, yeah, that's my favorite Goosebumps villain, y'all. So, yeah, that's my top 5 favorite Goosebumps villains. Let me know down in the comment section, which 5 Goosebumps villains, monsters, themes, or whatever, are your favorite in the Goosebumps series? I want to know. And I'll see you next time.